I'd like to welcome you all to the Forest Park Economic Development Meeting of Wednesday, May 26, 2021. This is a virtual Zoom meeting, and we currently have a quorum, and we have a guest Zoom participant as well. So we'll start with the roll call. Paul, you want to call the roll?
Mr. Stadnick,
Present.
Miss Adams,
Present.
Miss Councilor Clark,
I'm here.
Mr. Bedford,
I'm here.
Mr. Johnson,
I'm presently here.
Oh, good to hear that. Hey, Ron, I didn't see you on here.
and I've noted that Councilor Herbie is also here as the council liaison.
Okay, very good. So we have
Eddie Miners is still on the commission, correct?
that's correct.
So we
Does
do
there
need
need-
a motion to
Yeah.
excuse Mr. Miners.
I move to excuse Ed Miners from tonight's meeting. And I'll second that.
Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we excuse Mr. Miners from the night's meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes of the last meeting?
They're in order.
Okay, they are sent out by the EDC program director to all the committee members prior to the meeting. So you're not a commission member, so you didn't get any, Laura. Okay, the minutes. Anybody have any amendments, corrections to the minutes? The chair will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as read, as written.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as they are written.
We need a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman's report. I have three items actually to report on. As everyone knows, we still have an opening on the commission. And so I would encourage all of you fellow commissioners that if you know anyone that would be interested in joining the commission, tell them to go to the Forest Park City website, and there is a link on there, application for commissions. And that link is also in Paul's greeting to the meeting, I think, that he just sent out in the last few days. Also, regarding the membership on the commission, I want to remind the commissioners that you must be either A, resident of Forest Park, or B, own a business in Forest Park, or C, be a manager of a business in Forest Park. I believe that's the way it is written in the bylaws. Paul, anybody want to correct me if I'm wrong? Okay.
I just wasn't aware that it was either you could have executive level management, but I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I wasn't aware of that.
You weren't aware of what, Laura?
I said I wasn't aware that you could be a manager.
Yes, this has been discussed before. If
Yeah.
you say you have to be an owner, it would eliminate many of our large employers, which are owned from outside, but are really managed internally.
So if anyone knows of anyone, please tell them to send in an application. Diane, you're up next, but I'll ask now anyhow. Are there any applications pending with the council?
There are a couple that have come, there are none that have come to council yet. There've been a couple that have been served on Human Resources Committee.
Okay,
So there,
that's one issue I wanted to discuss. The second was the election, which all of you know, I'm a poll worker official, and I worked the election on May 4th. It was a busy day. We had a good turnout. I worked at the Forest Park Senior Center, and we had, because the church next to the high school, the Baptist church there, the Spanish church was sold, and the new owner didn't want to host the election there. That precinct was moved over to the senior center, and we had three precincts
yeah,
at the center.
yeah.
Yes, Trevina,
You're muted, Trevina.
you're muted, Trevina, you're muted.
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask that if anyone that is not speaking, if they could mute, because there is some background noise and it's very difficult for me to hear.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
Thank you. That was my next comment because somebody had a radio on or TV or something. Okay, next, the last one I wanted to discuss, and this may generate a lot of questions. So I'll just initiate it and then ask if you prefer me to defer it under new business, under the discussion portion of that, or if you want me to make my report now. That has to do with the school board. I attended Dr. Smith's meeting at the gazebo in Green Hills the Sunday before the election. And he gave an interesting talk on why everyone should vote yes for the levy. And then I worked the polls on election day, and the election was pretty lopsided. It was 2,100 against the levy and 800 for the levy. Of the 20 precincts, only 2 voted for the levy, and that was the J precinct right next to the school and to the west of the new school, and the A. And their for and against was only 58-55 and 49-39. So they did not have a large majority of members voting in those 2 precincts for the levy, but they did vote for it nonetheless. So it was defeated pretty healthily. And I had a number of discussions before and after the election relative to the election and the for and against. And I was really surprised at the number of senior African-American, including a number of teachers, that voted against the levy. And I was just surprised at that because they were teachers, but all of them were seniors. They were all 60 or so, and they were retired teachers. But anyhow, the results were what they were. And about that time, somebody had brought up some topics to me about other reasons than the school failing, which it has been failing for a number of years. They brought up some other issues, and they evolved around, and you all know me, so you know, I moved back into Forest Park after I was gone for 10 years, even though the demographics has flipped almost 100%. I mean, it was 80-20 Caucasian to African-American when I left here. And when I got back, it was 20 and 80% minority. But I liked the community. The people in leadership positions were still here when I moved back. So I chose to move back into this community again, and again, be active as I was in the 80s and 90s on the commissions. So, one of the topics that came up, though, had to do with critical race theory. Diana's looking sort of funny there. And project, the 1619 project. Now, if you study either of those things, which I have not, but I have got a little bit of a briefing on them, they are history revision projects. And somebody pointed to me a video that was on YouTube of the Loudoun County School District, which is in Virginia. And I said, why do they call it the Loudoun County School District? Well, I learned something, like I try to do every day. And there are a number of states in the union that school districts are made up of the whole county. Kentucky, I found, is one of them. I did not know that before. Maybe someone who's familiar with Kentucky can verify that. But Kentucky and Virginia are two of the several school districts that a school district is made up by the county. And they pointed me to a video of parents who stormed the school board meeting. And I don't want to discuss what was discussed in that video because it's quite graphic sexually and pornographically. But it was discussed in the meeting that there were 3 books that were brought into the school district for 12 and 13-year-old recommended reading. And they talked about graphic sexual activity. The parents who protested at that meeting, one of the school board members said, we had no idea that that book was in here. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I thought the school board had to approve books. So it made me think, well, I wonder if that could be the case in Forest Park. So I went to the school board meeting last Monday and asked that question. And I wasn't able to speak at the meeting, but I spoke after the meeting with the business manager and with Dr. Smith. And they said, Dr. Smith told me, and I find this difficult to believe, but if he said it, I guess it's true, that he actually, after Dr. Ragland reads them, he reads the recommended readings. And what happened in Loudoun, as I explained to him, could not happen in our school district. But I wanted to find that out because this is the second time in the last 10 years where school boards have found out that there were improper readings in the school district that were allowed that the school boards didn't know about them. So I went to the meeting to find out about that, and I did get an answer that apparently the school board reviews any and all recommended literature for the school. And this literature was for 12 and 13-year-olds in Loudoun County. And if you Google Loudoun County parents storm school board meeting, you will see the videos that I don't want to discuss here at the meeting because they're very graphic. Also, a number of the residents talked to me about critical race theory. And go ahead.
Well, I'm curious about what this has to do with our economic development. This is an interesting discussion.
Well,
But why is that relevant to economic development?
Because the school district relies on our residential tax dollars to survive. And as a realtor, as I explained before, I get a number of people saying to me, I don't want to move into Forest Park. And I say, well, you can get a home here, the same footprint as Springdale or Green Hills for $10,000 less. So it would be wise for you economically to move into the city. So I'm trying to promote people to move into the city and giving them valid reasons. But then they say to me, well, the schools are failing. And not only that, they're going to have on the ballot a levy increase. And now we're going to have failing schools and higher taxes. So economically, it has to do with Forest Park getting houses sold. And Paul's got a good article to follow in his discussion about houses selling good in Forest Park now. But that's why I brought it up under economic development. And I wanted people to know, and I offered Dr. Smith the opportunity to speak to him about some of these issues that residents talked to me about, why they were voting against the levy. And that's really all I have to say about it. But I hope that answers your question, Diane.
Well, I just,
Hmm.
I understand where you're coming from as a realtor. And I've heard these complaints about the school district, and that's why people don't want to move here because it's a failing school district and all this kind of thing. But I want you to remember that we make the policy for the city. We do not make policy for the school district.
Understood.
You can go to the school district, you can raise these issues with them, but we can't determine what they do and how they do. When it comes to things that I've heard about why people were not interested in voting for this, the thing that you hear most is, well, number one, they complain about the high taxes here, and they don't understand that probably 80% of the taxes that they pay go to the schools and not to the city. The second thing that I've heard is that there's a pandemic that's on, and people have been
I'm
struggling.
sorry, say that again,
with this.
please.
There is a pandemic that's been going on, and people have been financially struggling.
Yes.
And why they keep bringing this up during this pandemic, I understand why they do, because having worked with school districts, I know that once you build something, then you've got to go out and get an operating levy, which they
Yep.
didn't explain to the citizens. But I know that for a fact that every time you have a building, they're going to be coming right back at you for an operating levy. And they said they wouldn't do that, and they've done it. That's also the things that I've heard. You told us that you wouldn't do this, and now here you are doing this.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are a lot of factors feeding into, I think, why this has gone down. It's the pandemic and the economic problems. It's the failing school system. It's the high taxes, which are going to continue to go up if they keep putting these levies up. There is the feeling that they've been let down because they were told that this wasn't going to happen, and it has happened. There are a lot of reasons, but we don't control that. The city government doesn't control that. They control their policies and what they do. I've heard complaints about them not setting high standards for behavior. I've heard people complain about the behavior there and that they don't follow up and hold the kids accountable. There are a lot of reasons. So I just want us not to go down the route of trying to solve their problems for them.
I think that is very important that we do consider some of what is being said. I think that Ed makes some very valid points, and I hear you as well, Diana. You make some very valid points. And so 80% of the taxes that are being paid by Forest Park residents, that money is going to the school district. Yes, we have a levy that did not pass. We have a pandemic and economic problems and high taxes and all of that. But let's be real honest, transparent and real. A lot of this was before the pandemic.
That's right.
Forest Park schools did not start failing when the pandemic happened. So when you talk about critical race theory, yes, it is very much so relevant. And yes, it has a lot to do with our economic status. Part of the discussion that residents are having, I've been having with residents is, you want me to pay taxes, but you're not giving me anything for it. We don't have a rec center. We don't have an art center. We don't have theater. We don't have any of this, but you want me to pay for it. And then you can drive down any street in Forest Park. This has something to do with the economic piece. You can drive down any street in Forest Park and some of the houses look as if possibly they could be abandoned. You have falling fences, you have cars in driveways, you have roofs that have tarps over them, you know, so yes, it all has something to do with our economic development, because if you want to attract new people and families, and also too, we have to think about this for Forest Park and the economic consensus. And that is a lot of the people that originally moved in Forest Park are beginning to age out. And so now their children are buying the property or renting the property out or giving it to Section 8. And so you have people that are moving into our community that really don't care. So yes, it has something to do with the economic stability and the economic commission. And I do believe that it's not so much us making it their problem, our problem. If we don't make it our problem, it is going to be our problem. Because I have friends today that said, I don't go to that Kroger because it's dirty and it's nasty. I don't want to live in Forest Park because I'm not getting anything from my taxes. So yeah, we've got to do something about it. You have redlining and all of that stuff that's going on. Forest Park is not exempt from that. We have a very high poverty level here. It's some things that we need to do differently. And as a resident, I am concerned. So yeah, it does have something to do with it. And we do need to get in partnership, get on board, develop some relationships, start talking to the right people. There are some things that need to be done. What needs to be done? I don't have a plan, but we need to do something. Because it's in 30 years, Forest Park, as I see it today, will not be like this.
I think the other, and well said, but I think the other element that Ed is trying to shine a light on is that, you know, there's a causation in terms of why it did not pass, and the district needs to be forced to understand the reasoning behind those. It's not being passed. I went to several meetings, and one of the meetings I went to, I said, what will be, you know, what's your plan B should this not pass? What percentage of layoffs are we looking at? Which areas of academia or programming is going to be affected? And the response I received was, it's going to pass, so we don't need a contingency plan. It's going to pass. Now, as a business owner, that makes absolutely no sense to me. But, you know, and maybe that was just, you know, pure optimism. But the reality of it is that just what Ed was saying is that those comments and how people are viewing our school district ultimately ended up handing them a no vote to move forward. And so if our district continues to not understand why people are very upset and why people aren't willing to shell out more dollars, if you can't fix what you don't know, there's no way you're going to be able to make improvements on it. And we need them as a city to be invested in making those improvements and hearing from the community, not to say that you're hearing from us, but to hear us so that we're actually heard to make some changes. And then, you know, then we can begin to work, you know, collaboratively so that we can, you know, really advance our economic footprint here.
Thank you, Ms. Nuss.
I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Ron. I wanted to give you
this-
and Richard a chance to comment, and then we want to move on. Go ahead.
Yeah, for this election, let me just tell you this. You always hear them talking about the schools are failing, right? But listen to this. If you have an F average, and if you get all A's, your average is going to be what? A C at best. And so I know they pull that up. I just want to say they had a Rhodes Scholar graduate this year, first time in 20 years. They had 120 kids. So there's so many great things going on. But I wanted to say the person that they put in charge of the election for the school, we have, I think, and I'm looking at this chart Paul gave me too, we have like about 18,000 residents just in Forest Park. That guy did not do his job. His job was to go out and try to encourage at least And let me just, I'll just tell you, he or she who was doing it, they were supposed to go out and get in contact with at least 3,000 people. And usually for these midterm, that is enough to win those actually kind of things. So what gets mixed up is the taxes between the school versus the taxes of the actual city. They're two different animals, but whenever people talk, you always hear them say, we don't have a rec center, but a rec center has nothing to do with the actual school. The roads have nothing to do with the actual school. So I said those things, they get mixed up, but they're not related. It's a lot of misinformation, but you have two phenomenal school buildings. You are competitive in so many different areas, but to say you're not going to help the schools because of high taxes, I just say that when we ran it a couple of years now, I'm not talking about what I hear. I'm telling you what we actually done. This was our strategy. If we didn't even try to leave Forest Park, but we hit X number of houses. We try to get as many people to actually vote in advance. And if that would have happened, especially now, because what would we say? Only 3,000 people voted. That's peanuts. If he or she would have just went and just done the minimum and just did anybody get any fire? But the economic impact, I think there is a mix up on the taxes by the city versus the taxes of the school. They're not the same, and people keep putting them together, but that is a misnomer. That's not true.
Well, I hope that then he or she did not get paid for their lackluster performance in explaining
It was
what was
voluntary.
Well, then maybe that's why. Well, then maybe that's why it's poo-poo.
Mr. Bedford, do you have a comment, sir?
One comment I wanted to say is I just think that the community, as a community, we need to hire the standards and also hire the standards with the residents. Like Trevina was saying, I think that the houses in the community need to be some type of fine or penalties for having their houses looking a certain way, things like that. And that's going to all trickle down. That's going to relate to more voters coming out and voting for the levy, passing the school levy and things like that. So I think that is very much related. And I also been preaching for, since I even got on this committee, that a rec center is very much, I think, is a necessity for our community. And that's something that we've been needing from, I've been living in this community since I was in second grade, since the 80s. And in the summertime, we had the schools turn into a rec center. And by 30 years later, it seemed like we would have invested into a community center to bring people together, to bring the community together for the school system. I think that it's a very close correlation between the two. That was just a comment I wanted to make.
But Ron, I like to say this, and then I will leave it alone because this is something I'm very passionate about. And that is, you talk about city taxes and you talk about school taxes. The residents don't care. To them, it's just taxes. And they know that their paychecks are getting smaller and taxes are going up. And they just don't want to pay any more taxes. And if they have to pay taxes, they want to have something to show for it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I agree.
Diane, go ahead, please.
Yeah, having been on council for 16 years and been a resident for 26 years, I will tell you, I know the community wants a rec center. I want a rec center. We all want a rec center. But you have to pay for it and you have to be able to operate it yearly. What was the last figure we had? It was like 10 to 13 million to build the blasted thing, and at least $1 million. It's probably now 2 million to operate. We need to deal with economic development, recruiting businesses to this community, retaining businesses to this community, to have the taxes to even start to go down. That the only way that you could do it is to tax the residents to do it. And that has been put before them 3 times, and it has been voted down 3 times. You can't get something for nothing.
I think within the last 18 years, we possibly could have gotten something done. If we're bringing in new businesses, then maybe we need to put the bill on the new businesses that are coming in. We're giving tax abatements. You know,
We do not have the property.
we have the property, we had
We
the
have the
opportunity.
property.
No,
We had
do.
the opportunity when we built the school.
One moment, please. One person at a
We
time,
do
please.
not have the property for the kind of businesses to supply this community for the kind of money that they have in Blue Ash. Paul, how much acreage do we have available for businesses to move into this community?
Paul?
It's probably close, believe it or not, because of Carillon. We probably have about 40 acres at Carillon and probably another 20 that I can think of off the top of my head out of 6 square miles. So there is, we've tried to open up some room. Obviously, when the mall becomes available, that's another 90 acres.
That's still not forced.
But it's important to note that, we actually, and Trevina, as you know from being on the commission, we don't do that much in tax abatement anymore. We've really tried to back off of that a little bit and use that as a tool for only some of the larger projects and and really focus that on
The rec center would be considered a larger project.
So, but it's and the goal with the abatement programs is always we look for the return on that taxpayer investment and what it generates. And typically the abatement programs are generating new revenue from the first day of the abatement because we only do partial abatements. And then we also base those abatements on the other taxes that are generated by the business. So we try to make sure, and I think everyone who's been on council has always supported that philosophy and that strategy that it's a way to take taxpayer investment, but we really look at what the return on that investment is from the abatement before we grant those.
And I just
Thank
want
you
to
very
say
much. Thank you very much. Excuse me, Chelsea. Everybody has had an opportunity to speak. I would like to move forward with the rest of the meeting, and then under new business discussion, if anyone wants to go back to this topic, I think that would be better served by doing that, because we do have an agenda to get through here tonight, and I'd like to move forward. So thank you for your input thus far. And Chelsea, forgive me, bring your topic up under new business discussion, please. Okay, thank you. Council liaisons report.
Since this pandemic's been going on, we haven't really been doing much virtually except routine business. So these are the kinds of things that we do yearly in terms of, what can I say? Same old stuff. Issues come up that, amendments to the appropriations to take care of. We just had to create 2 standalone line items for federal funds that had to be separated from other funds. So these are routine things that have just been going on. There's been no great initiatives going on other than when Paul brings us something for economic development. But right now we're trying to do a holding pattern because of the pandemic. And so it's just routine things.
One more thing, Diane, please. Do you have any report on how many counselors will be being reelected or up for vote again this fall?
There are 4 up for election this fall. Myself, the mayor, Chelsea, and Rosalind. And actually there are 4 up for the school district. There are 3 normally, but one of them, but there is another one that was vacated by Jessica Miranda, and the appointee to that position is up for an unexpired term. That happens from time to time, depending on when a 4-year term is vacated. So there are actually 4 seats up for election this year in the school district.
On council, it's yourself, Mayor Johnson, Chelsea, and who else?
Rosalind Moore.
Oh, Rosalind Moore, okay. And then you say of the 7 members on the school board, 4 of them
There-
are,
There are 4 up. Viola, Ron's wife, John Cupoletti, who was appointed to Jessica's. So that term that he currently holds will be a 2-year term when it goes on the ballot.
okay,
John Bertkey is also up, and Gino McGowan is also up.
okay, thank you very much. Nothing else, Diana?
No,
All right, we'll move to the director's report. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go any further, I did think it might be nice to introduce Laura. I know that she's an interested party who's got an interest in economic development and the commission, the community. And thank Trevina for inviting Laura to join us tonight. And Laura, I didn't know if you wanted to say a couple of words before we get going, but just
Sure.
wanted to give you that opportunity.
Thank you. So I lived in Green Hills for, I don't know, maybe 12 years and then moved to Forest Park because we outgrew our townhouse. So we've lived in Forest Park for 14 years. I currently work for Wentwood City Schools as the administrative assistant for the Department of Teaching and Learning. But I actually was the one to host those community meetings, one at Shooters with Mr. Smith present and one at the gazebo in the village of Green Hills, which I love Green Hills. So, I mean, I'm very connected to all of these parts. And Mr. Smith came to both of them and answered several questions, which are very pertinent to the community as you're talking, especially to me, number one, which I think is very, just the community can grab onto this, is what is going to happen to those buildings, the old Beechwoods, which is now Primary North, currently Primary North, and then Primary South, which is at Lakeside. So he answered those. I did propose that he start having a superintendent section in the Green Hills Journal, because I do exactly what you said. We need to know what's going on. We want to hear from him, hear straight from the horse's mouth. I think we have a lot of important community members and just regular old, Joes and Sams that want to know what's going on. And we don't see that. Like in the Green Hills Journal, we don't see from Mr. Smith what's going on with the schools. So I think that's really important. Like I said, we had 2 great meetings. I have about 80 people on a spreadsheet that want to know more. And that's it.
Thank you for that input, Laura. You say we don't know what's going on as residents you're talking about, or as a commission?
Correct, as residents.
Yes. And we, when I moved back here in 2010, I was on the commission and I met with Dr. Smith as a realtor.
Ed,
And yes, ma'am.
Ed, we've got to,
Say what, sir?
nothing, we just need to, just if you could, please just, be brief about your nostalgia. Politely asking.
Was someone going to say something else?
Ed, if you'd like, I can go ahead and continue with that report.
Go ahead.
So I want to thank Laura. I want to thank Trevina for reaching out to Laura. I think, as we hopefully get closer and back to normal, hopefully, we'll be able to, get back to in-person meetings and having some guests at our meetings. So I appreciate Laura's participation tonight. I also wanted to call attention to a couple of things. I did distribute a written report that was included in your packet, but wanted to highlight a couple of items. Number one, at a recent council meeting, we actually recognized a longtime Forest Park business as one of our businesses of the month. And the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is I think it's characteristic of our business community. And I think Chelsea and Diana recognize this. We recognize Dr. James Katz, who's a dentist over on Northland. It has been there for, Diana, was it 4 decades now? Over on Northland, more. And it's an outstanding story. It's your typical kind of Forest Park business person story. Someone who comes here, starts his business, grows it over time, and stays with us that long. And what I didn't realize was Dr. Katz actually built the building that he's in, which I did not realize until after I talked to him. So, this is an example of kind of the bread and butter of our business community. We always talk about it, the small business people that start out small and stay with us over time and grow their business and build a life for themselves and their families. So very happy to be able to recognize Dr. Katz with that honor. I also toured with county officials, the Magnum machine renovation. It was really impressive going in and taking a look at the renovated old shopping center that they took ownership of, renovated. As you know, that was a $5 million project. I'm happy to report that they've exceeded their investment and job creation totals as a result of that project. So we're very thrilled with where Magna's going. And what's even better news is talking to Scott Kramer and the management team there. The company actually has a great deal of work in the pipeline. This is actually the busiest that they've been in 15 years. So it was good to hear that, because as all of you can imagine, when the pandemic hit, everything shut down, and they were able to keep their people on board. They were able to utilize some of the programming at the federal level to do that, but then have already been able to pay a lot of that back, and have actually continued to grow the company. So we're very thrilled with that. I think we're going to continue to see some more improvements that they're building over there. We also worked, as many of you know, we work with Ready Cincinnati in partnership with them. Ready is the Jobs Ohio representative, so for Southwest Ohio. We've talked about this before. In Ohio, the state's economic development program is actually managed by a private not-for-profit agency. It's one of the few states in the country that does that. There is a state department that oversees that work, but there's actually a private nonprofit that handles their economic development work. And then the economic development offices are set up through these existing agencies, Ready being the representative here in Southwest Ohio. As you know, we're a partner with Ready. Ready's done a lot of good work with us. They were instrumental in helping us get about $300,000 in state money for the Northland projects at Magna and Faxon. And recently, they've helped us access a program at the state called an Inclusion Grant Program. The Inclusion Grant provides financial support for eligible projects in designated communities and for businesses owned by underrepresented populations across the state. To qualify for an inclusion grant, a company must be owned by a member of an underrepresented population. That can include consideration of geographic, race, ethnicity, gender, veterans, and disabilities. Or it has to be located in a distressed community as defined by the Economic Innovation Group. We had two companies that received these grants recently, thanks to Ready. Ready helped us secure these, and I have to give credit where credit is due. This was something they really took the lead on, and Ian Smith at Ready helped two of our companies, Surgy Health Solutions. This is a company that was founded in 2014 by Joshua Williams. And it's basically a fast-growing provider of sterile processing operating room, endoscopic surprise, and I probably butchered that, Diana, and education. They fill a need for efficient processes and innovative services and solutions, reduce costs, but also at a simplicity in the ever-changing medical industry. So it's kind of an interesting company that I think has a lot of upside. They were able to receive one of these grants. And Griffin Fire and Pipe, which specializes in the installation, service, and maintenance of fire sprinkler systems for new and existing buildings. They're a licensed and certified professional team with over 30 years of experience in the industry. They're equipped to service projects ranging from the simple to the complex, mostly on the commercial side. But again, I think these are two examples of small companies with a lot of upside potential. And I want to thank our team and our partners at Ready for helping us secure those inclusion grants from the state of Ohio for those two companies. We're also continuing to work on the La Rosa's renovation project on Hamilton. We are working with with our real estate team to market the city-owned property at the corner of Waycross in Hamilton. You might remember we actually approved a resolution at one of our previous commission meetings to enter into that agreement with Colliers International. Council passed a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into those contracts. Colliers actually put together a kind of a preliminary development plan for that property that shows how a 150,000 square foot building could be placed on the property. And we're taking that to market now to see if we can't find and use that as kind of a carrot to try to attract either a developer or a prospect to that property. I think it's, our goal is to move that site as quickly, hopefully this year. But we want to put something in there that's a job generator and creates opportunity and wealth for us for the long term over at that corner. The last thing was, and I think the discussion we had earlier kind of demonstrates what was kind of mentioned in this article. There was a really nice article in the Cincinnati Enquirer today. If you didn't see it, I did send you all the link, kind of highlighting the rising home values in Forest Park. And as we've discussed on this commission, home values have been kind of an Achilles heel for our community over the years. So it's kind of nice to see that we're getting some strength in that portion of our portfolio. We're seeing the residential values rise. They said our median household income is, our median household house value is $170,000+ now. The numbers we had just last year were probably closer to the mid 150s. So, we've seen an increase. Now, some of that's related to the market that we're in right now. Some of that may be inflated a little bit, but I do think it says something about the community. We're starting to have an impact. And I think the interesting thing was, if you look at the communities where there were some increases in that article, it was typically communities that did attract some new residential construction. Springdale, ourselves, a couple of the other communities all had new residential construction. So I think it's important that we continue to pursue that as we're moving down the road with our program of work. But I think that what comes along with that, and I think one of the things we're hearing tonight is there's rising expectations that come with those improved home values. I think Trevina hit it right on, hit the nail on the head. The expectation now is, okay, the prices are rising, the value is rising. It's all great, but now we need to create a return on that investment for the residents. And I think that's what we're hearing tonight. So I think that that's the next step. But I think that the good thing about this article, and one thing I do want to take a minute to kind of celebrate, is housing values are rising. And as I think Diana and Chelsea and everybody who's been here a while, and Ed with your business can attest, that's a positive step forward. Now we need to take that next step and start making it worthwhile for people to make those investments here. The last thing in my report is I wanted to comment, as many of you know, I'm an instructor for the Ohio Basic Economic Development course. And that course was held last month. We had 60 students from across the state of Ohio for a 3-day course. It's all virtual still because of the pandemic, but I was part of the instruction staff for that class. I taught professional ethics and redevelopment for that class last month. So, and that would conclude my report.
Ron, you had a question, Ron?
Yep, I was trying to ask Paul just quickly, how the impact of the increased value, how does that help the city? Is there tax revenue that's generated?
Well,
Property
typically the taxes that would be generated, Ron, property taxes generally go to other entities, whether it's county agencies or the school district. And I don't want to make the school district to be the guys in the black hat here, because honestly, that's just the way they're funded. As all of us know, the school districts across the state have been trying to get, find a new method for funding our schools that isn't reliant upon property tax. But property taxes are a primary component of their funding formula, but there's also county agencies that goes to as well. Very little property tax comes to the city. Most of our income comes from the earnings and income taxes. So that is something to remember.
Okay.
And Paul, I had a tax question too. Have you had discussions with Harlita, who's our finance director, about the real concerns that we have about the steps that are being taken at the state to, one, collect our income taxes there and redistribute them back to us, where we've seen that happen in other instances to our loss, and two, with the pandemic changing how people work and that they are working more from home. While this pandemic has been going on, they were saying that they would be taxed based on where they worked, not where they were working from. But my understanding is that going forward, they are saying that they can get money back because they have been working from home and not from where the location where they work is located. And how is that going to affect us?
My understanding, Diana, is that bill did pass the House, and now it goes to the Senate for reconciliation. I think that there is, I think cities, and I think we're in this group, have taken some of the federal money that has come as a result of the American Recovery Act and the CARES Act previously, have taken some of that money and set it aside for that very reason. That there could be, it could impact, particularly in the short term, that latter issue brought up. So I think that's one of the reasons that the city manager has been reluctant to, spend some of that money, because I think he sees that there could be a gap there in the financing for us. It's very difficult to tell what the impact's going to be. We've got a lot of moving pieces here, because in addition to all of the people that were working from home, we've also got some new employees that'll be coming online here probably halfway through the year, with the 300 employees at Liberty Mutual that's coming on board. So we've got some new employees too. So I think it's hard to say. I don't know that Harlita has an estimate yet of what that impact could be. It could be a substantial impact because, again, the earnings and income taxes, that's where we see most of our revenue. So if we have to give rebates back to people who were working from home, and what I'm hearing is it's not going to be for the entire time. It's going to be from the time that the emergency orders were rescinded. That's my understanding of it. Now, I might be wrong. And it's more of a Harlita question probably than one.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm hearing is that it's going to be impactful from the point of, and which I think goes back to, what is that, May, when the primary emergency orders were rescinded. So, but there will be some impact probably.
My real concern is long-term, that if we find, that the 400, 500, 600 that we have at Ameritas, suddenly half of these people are working from home and living outside of Forest Park. If the legislature goes down the path of saying that they will be taxed where they are working, not where their business is located, then we've got 300 fewer people being taxed in Forest Park.
Yeah.
I think
stimulus money may cover some of that, but I'm thinking of long-term impact down the line.
I've sat in on a couple of webinars with CoStar and a couple of the other real estate services, and the consensus is that they actually feel, while there'll be some bleed off, and it's going to be dependent upon the industries, the thought is that it's not going to be as impactful long-term as what people may think. They think people are going to be returning to the office.
I hope so.
Now, in our case, what we're hearing from both Emeritus and Liberty Mutual, which are the two of the larger ones, is that they're going to be coming back to the office. Part of that is, quite honestly, it might be some luck on our part, because both of those companies collectively invested, as we all know, close to $10 million on the office renovations. That money's spent. So I think that from their perspective, I think that they're going to be coming back into the office. I think we're going to be okay with our larger employers. Now, how that's going to react with maybe some of our smaller and mid-sized employers, as we all know, we've got a large number of employers that are in that 50 to 150 range. You know, a lot of our stuff in Campamento, a lot of our tech stuff is in that range. So, you know, we're keeping an eye on it. I think it's going to mean that we're going to have some work to do, particularly in terms of kind of replacing some of that with new businesses, and converting some of this property that we've talked about converting as part of our revitalization program back to alternative uses. You know, some of the projects we talked about have taken a while to come to fruition. I think that's going to be where we're heading in the next, you know, I think in terms of economic development, I think what it means over the next 2 to 3 years, redevelopment is going to even become more important, because you have to kind of backfill some of the space. Right. And it's not going to be, you know, we've all talked about it. Retail is not going to be the solution. Retail is going to be changed. It's not that bricks and mortar stores are going away, but it's not going to be account for nearly as much space as it has in the past. Some of our offices may indeed shrink. If they do, we need to replace that by doing some of this redevelopment work and creating new product that attracts some, you know, again, small and medium-sized businesses. And I think, again, we go back to our bread and butter. You know, we've talked about it, you know, EQ, Cincinnati Testing Labs, Geotech, you know, you can name them. We've got dozens of firms, Fax and Magna, that started out as small family-owned companies, and we built them up from the ground up. We're going to have to do more of that in the next 5 years.
I just don't want to see any more pregnancy centers or Class C businesses popping up in Forest Park. I just don't want to see any more of that. Just don't.
Well, I agree. I think also, though, the thing we have to recognize, well, there's two things. One, there's the whole planning and zoning issue. And if it's consistent with the planning and zoning, we don't own the property. It's the private property owner. I think the way that we combat that is by creating a better business environment that's more attractive for the type of businesses that we want. We have had some success. You know, we talked about this at our last meeting, I think. You know, if you look at the Liberty Mutual Emeritus project alone, that was a $10 million office project with 1,000 jobs retained or created. That's going to be one of the larger projects once it's completed in this suburban loop this year. So I think that we are making some progress there, but the way we combat that, you know, I think you can only do so much with planning and zoning.
That's correct.
Combat it by creating, and this gets back to your comments earlier, Trevina, it's almost applying the same thing that we're talking about with the residential community to the commercial side, and saying we need to create a better environment so that we're attracting a better product.
Correct.
Well, I was going to share that a lot of the companies that have people working from home, because of the actual hackers that are out there now, they're struggling, and most of them are trying to get their people back into buildings where they have a better security system. The fact that I'm on and this one's on, hackers are getting in those systems, and they're actually holding them for ransom. And so right now they're actually doing it, but long term they got to get them back in a more secure area so that they can actually protect their intellectual property.
I've heard the same thing, Ron. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
All right, if there's nothing else there, we'll move on to unfinished business.
Well,
Chelsea,
and can
you-
I just say one more thing?
yes, sir.
That article that Paul gave us, I just wanted to read just this one section. It says something happened and they're talking about Forest Park. It says only about a third of Black families in Cincinnati are homeowners. And then they gave the actual stats for Forest Park. In Forest Park, the split is almost 59% of white families own their own property, and 58% of Black, also African American families, own their property. So this community, I know a lot of people they can't see it, but there are a lot of good things going on in this community,
Yes.
especially for if you're here. We have a lot of ownership that is here, and so I think that I thought it was a great article. It's 4 pages long, but I think if you guys read it, it's a phenomenal article that was in the Cincinnati Inquirer that he gave us. So that is a great stat to just start throwing out and let people know we're doing good here.
And Ron, I think the key thing with this is it's not a situation of, one side of this argument being right or one side is. I think it reinforces each other, and it gets back to what I was discussing about Trevina's comments from earlier. It's because we're starting to have this success that I think the expectations are being raised. That's a good thing.
That is,
I think that's a good path for us to be going down. And now I think it's a question of, and this is, above my pay grade, it's for city council on how we create policies that create that environment, that creates a much more inviting, that sense of place that people are going to want to locate their business and also relocate their family in terms of living. That all comes together now. But that's why we're hearing comments like we heard tonight. It's because we're seeing some success. And I think it's good that the bar is being raised. That's what we want.
That's what we need. That is what we need.
All right, I'd like to move on to unfinished business. Chelsea, if you want to discuss the minority community business development plan.
I don't have anything new to report because we had the one meeting and I made a report. And so we have another meeting next week and I'll have more to talk about after that meeting.
Chelsea, is the mortar, is that coming to the training class, the cohort? Is that coming up? I thought it was June.
Well, no, they started in March.
Okay.
It's coming to an end
Right.
here in, it's coming to an end next month in the
Okay.
next couple weeks. So I'm anxious to see, kind of what has transpired during it. I actually spoke with, had a brief conversation with Cynthia about their progress, and I did have an extended conversation with one of the business owners, and he thanked me, and he just said he was just really, really excited, and he felt so good about having that opportunity. I will say when it comes to just business growth, creation, minority business, what have you, I've been a recipient of Cincinnati Youth Collaborative of a lot of students to help my business and to help put youth to work. And so I will be meeting with the CEO of Cincinnati Youth Collaborative to discuss some better pathways that Forest Park can engage in that and get more of our youth to work. And they, of course, they foot the bill for that. So that I think that'll help lift some of our businesses out as well. Whether and they don't have to just be minority, of course. So I will let you all know how that goes.
Thank you, Chelsea. Paul, did you want to cover the Hamilton County Library project?
Absolutely. Just a quick update so that we are making progress on that. I think I explained at our last meeting that the construction side of the library's comprehensive facilities plan is actually going to come after they do their renovation projects. So we're not going to see new construction occur probably this year, may not even occur until the end of next year. However, we did have a letter of intent, a draft of that letter submitted to us. I don't want to get into details too much tonight because we've got some work on both sides. I think there's a couple of issues that need to be resolved. It's nothing that's going to prevent us from doing the project. But we do have some areas that we got to work out. It's not uncommon. And I think that we'll probably see a coming together of the minds here shortly, and we should have something for council to review in an upcoming work session, I hope, in the near future. But we all know the library project's extremely important for us. I think we see that as the catalyst for redoing the entire Northland, Sharon, Waycross corridor there. I think it could lead to some substantial improvements. And that coupled with the redevelopment we talked about at Northland Tower and that property hopefully coming forward at some point here in the near future, that would give us a really strong boost in that Northland corridor. So that's our goal. And I think we want to try to push that this year. Sometimes this is, sometimes our economic development program is driven by opportunity. We've got a window of opportunity, I think, on Northland over the next 2 to 3 years, and we want to get that done.
Thank you, Paul. Under new business, Paul, you have this also, the Incentive Review Council. You met with them?
Just very quickly, actually, that'll occur later this summer. But the city appoints 2 representatives to sit on the Tax Incentive Review Council for Hamilton County. Typically, it's the Economic Development Director and EDC liaison from council. Council passed a resolution authorizing us to make those appointments earlier this year. The reason I wanted to bring it up is because the TIRC reviews our enterprise zone agreements and our tax increment financing agreements. We only have, I think, I should have looked before I came on. I want to say it's 4 or 5 enterprise zone agreements in effect currently. We don't have a lot. In the past, we've had as many as a dozen, but we don't have that many. It gets back to kind of what we were talking about before. We've tried to be really judicious with how we apply the enterprise zone program. That is our property tax abatement program that's run through Hamilton County. They monitor those agreements to make sure that the companies are in compliance. Now, I do have to say, it would not surprise me at all this year, given the pandemic, if we have a company or maybe 2 that had to fall back on their hiring requirements. What I anticipate will happen, we had this happen during the recession back in the mid 2000s. I think what we'll probably see is the TIRC issue some type of advisory letter to those companies and give them 12 months to come back into compliance. That's typically what we've seen in the past, not only for Forest Park companies, but for companies across Hamilton County. So we may see something similar this year. I can tell you, we had one company of ours, they've already contacted us that it's kind of similar to the Magna experience. They literally had to shut down in March of last year, and now they're starting to come back and come back even stronger. And now they're talking about doing a second expansion. So I think we're going to see some of that, but it may take some patience on everybody's part at the next TIRC meeting. The TIF agreements, we only have 2 TIFs in effect right now. One is at the Bowl, one is at Parkwood. The Parkwood agreement's operating as anticipated, and that provided us with dollars to do some of the public improvements associated with the interchange improvements several years ago at I-275 and Winton Road. The mall improvements, as we've discussed, that TIF is, as a financial tool, is operating as anticipated. You might recall that if the property did not generate the increase in taxes that was anticipated, the property owner himself had to pay an assessment to make up the difference. The property owner, believe it or not, is paying the assessment every year. As long as the assessment is paid, the debt is covered. And as a financial vehicle, it's operating. Now, what we never anticipated was that somebody would pay the assessment every year and not redevelop the property. You can determine for yourself if that's a rational way to approach this. But We do have an owner, and I must say, he is paying the assessment, paying his taxes, paying the property taxes on the property and being current. And so as a result of that,
Yeah.
financially, it's performing as anticipated and the debt is covered.
Thank you. In regard to TIFs, we have not had a company fail on a TIF in 10 years or more.
Yeah, but the TIFs we've done, Ed, have been project-related TIFs, so typically it's not geared towards one specific company. The mall's a little bit different, and that's why there's an assessment on it, because it does involve a single property owner. But the other TIFs we've done in the past, Caroline Park, West Kemper, and Witten, those TIFs have been more project-related, geared towards encouraging improvements in and around the property. So even the existing one at Parkwood involves multiple property owners, not just a single property owner.
Thank you. Okay, under discussion, I had 2 items. One is that for all the commissioners and our guest, if you know of anyone that is adept at doing taxes, the city is looking for a tax clerk, if you will, a tax associate to work in the finance department, in the tax department. And I think you have till mid-June, maybe June 9th, I'm not sure. But if you go to the website for Forest Park, you'll see there's a link there for application for the tax department. And it's a fair paying job. And if you know how to do taxes, it's, it might be monotonous to some, but it's not a real difficult job. That's one item. And then the second
What
item.
was the skill set? Do you have to have a degree or just simply know how to do QuickBook and some other goodies?
I think the latter. I don't think a degree it's a high school education. And there's no typing requirement like there used to be for words per minute or anything like that. It's basically doing a tax form for the city of Forest Park, from your US IRS 1040 form.
Seasonal or all year round?
They're looking all year round. I'm almost positive of that. It's a year-round position. Okay, the other one was they have whittled down the number of applicants. If I'm wrong on this, Diana, you can correct me. I think they've got 9 applicants, whittled down to 9 applicants for the police department. And they're going to be conducting interviews, I think the first week in June, maybe the second week.
Isn't this a second interview? Isn't this a second interview?
I thought they just whittled it down. We had a civil service meeting 2 weeks ago.
I know.
And that was the first interview that I was aware of. And they said there were, out of those applicants, they got a surprisingly good number of minority male, and I think there's a minority female as well, which is large. I'm sorry?
They've actually, they have invited, it's down to 3, and they've made the invites for the 3.
Thank you very much for that update.
Hold on a second.
You know if there's 3, Chelsea, if there are any minorities in the final 3?
I can't tell from paper, but
Oh, okay.
I think there are.
I would try.
I think there are.
Okay. And the reason I ask is that we have been trying our hardest over the last years to get minority applicants. In fact, I mean, as the commission knows, we had a minority city manager who, took himself out of the offering. And then we had some African-American police people, I guess it's 2 years ago now, maybe last summer, that had the opportunity to join the police force. But even though they passed the interview, when they did the background check, they were found they couldn't take the job. So
All right.
it's good to hear that we have some minorities in the final cut down.
We do. There were multiple people that couldn't pass a background check. So
And the female was good too, because we lost 50% of our females due to the reasons you all know why. Out of 4 police women, 2 of them left in the last year. And
Well, one was forced to leave because she partook in some illegal activity.
that's correct. That's
so
correct.
She didn't leave voluntarily.
That is correct. And well, that doesn't matter. That's the last.
Do you want to explain? We went from an internal sort of mass posting thing to actually working with a probably nationwide group that we draw on. And people then they test with this external group. And they afford the people who take the tests to indicate where they want their results sent. And as a result of going to this kind of outside group that does the testing, we have been able to access a larger pool of minorities and women as a result of that. So the last couple of times we've done that, our pool has been larger than previously.
That's correct. And I believe that's the NTI, the National Testing Institute.
Yeah, I think so.
And
Our department, our police department has also been extraordinarily intentional in this past round of recruitment by actually physically going up to Central State and recruiting. Those things had not been done prior to this go around either. And so there's been they're responding extremely well and really putting in the work. It's a lot of heavy lifting to find minority candidates, no matter what industry you're in. You've got to have a certain type of infrastructure. You have to have a zeal and a lot of elements in place to move that needle. And so I'm really proud of the work that they're doing and trying to make sure that they're intentional about that.
yeah, Bill Warnes has been really putting forth an effort. He and one of the officers went up to Butler Tech recruiting, and they went to another school recruiting. And we have a new member on civil service, Mr. I want to say Sarvin.
Stavon.
Help me again, Diane.
Stavon.
That's it. He just joined our commission, and he wants to be involved with the police chief going as a minority. He wants to go with the chief to his next visitations to promote Forest Park for minority police personnel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are openings. I just wanted to make people aware of that. That's the last item we have. Anyone else have anything for discussion?
I just would like to share that I had an interview and the Biz Journal picked it up and published it today. It was on minority.
We lost you, Chelsea. We lost you. Chelsea, can you hear me? Chelsea?
We lost her.
That usually indicates something wrong on her end.
Yeah.
She may have lost a Wi-Fi or had a bad Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah. We'll give her a minute to come back on. Does anyone have any other topics they want to discuss?
Just
Mr.
piggybacking
Foreman?
on, just
Oh, she's
piggybacking
back.
on.
Chelsea?
Oh, are you back, Chelsea?
Oh,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just piggybacking on what you were saying, I will say that one of the problems that we also have is that when we do get minority candidates, we often lose them to other jurisdictions because everybody is looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
And we often lose them to Cincinnati where they can get higher pay or someplace else, suburban Dayton. So we are out there trying very hard. And I'm very glad that we've had, this opportunity to get a larger pool, but it is challenging. It is very challenging.
I had a lady friend, young, probably late 20s, that was a martial arts instructor, and she went to Butler Tech, and she wanted to be a police person. And I told her about our opening, and she said, "Good, I'll look into that." Well, the next week when I saw her, she said, she went through the NTI also, and they called her and referred her to Middletown. I have no idea about the comparison of Middletown, money-wise or anything like that, but she went to Middletown. So
I don't want to steal Chelsea's thunder. So when she tells you all this, please be surprised. But since she got disconnected on the phone, I will tell you that there was an article written about her in the bizjournals.com. It's talking about her business, the STEM lab, which I had an opportunity to go visit the STEM lab. I was thoroughly impressed. If you have not been there, I encourage you to go. Take your children, take your grandchildren. It was phenomenal. I almost thought about quitting my job and pulling out my retirement and trying to figure out how I could be there full time. That's just how awesome it was. Chelsea has done an amazing job with that program. The children thoroughly enjoyed themselves. But if you get a chance, read the article. It talks about her as a startup. She talks about, as a minority business owner, being able to secure grants and funding and things like that, and really not having the resources. And then with her being the CEO and owner of the business, it can be a little challenging in some ways because she's spending so much time doing the operational piece of it that some of the building of the business she hasn't really had an opportunity to do. But again, the article was great. The program is phenomenal. I encourage everyone to go. It was great. I had a great time. I thought I was a kid again, and I'm playing with slime and everything else. So
Trevina, which magazine was that article in?
it's bizjournal.com.
B-I-Z?
B-I-Z as in zebra.
Yes.
Journal. So bizjournal.com.
I'm with you.
Yep. And it is the entrepreneur has advice for helping minority-led startups grow. Really impressed, really proud of her. She's really trying to make some moves. So we want to celebrate and encourage and support her in every way possible.
All right. I'll try to go to that site online and see if we can have.
I'm going to text it to Paul and maybe he can send it to everybody. Is that okay, Paul?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And like you, Trevina, I have had the opportunity to visit the STEM lab, and I sat in for 2 of her classes. And like you said, they are really good classes. The kids learn a lot. And she allows the parents to stay as well to watch the kids learn. So exactly. we just all sit in the background and don't say anything, and she does her teaching, and it's a real good opportunity to see how the STEM teaching works.
She has a new site as well. I don't know if you guys know about the Blue Ash site, but she's in a new space. I think it's like a 6,000 square foot space. It is amazing. That's all I can say. It's amazing.
Now, is that in addition to the Kemper Road one, or is it?
No, sir. I think she has moved from Kemper Road and moved to the Blue Ash location, and it was beautiful. Everything about it. I was like a kid running from room to room, just touching stuff. It was crazy. Could not contain myself. So definitely give her some love on that, you guys, and shout her out some kudos or whatnot. She earned it.
All right, bear with me just one moment.
A message and a contact.
Okay, I'm back. I just wanted to try to call Chelsea, and she's not answering her phone either. So we're gonna accept what Trevina said in her stead. And does anyone have any other discussion or any other items of importance?
I wanted to make a suggestion. I think I just think we're having some really great meetings. I think you do an excellent job, Paul, and you and Ed are doing great. I was going to say, when we come back from the summer break, can we have the city manager come and share some of his vision with us also? And just sort of like what it does for us, I mean, as a committee member, you're doing a great job of telling us. It's just be him, just come sharing with us and just let us sort of chew up the fat with him, see what he's got going on. And I just think that he doesn't have to, but it'd just be something interesting and nice.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a wonderful idea. As a resident,
Um,
I'd like to have him here as a resident.
Do you get his access to his almost weekly podcasts?
Well, he has a
Uh,
newsletter too, yes.
Well, he has a weekly, I think it's almost every week podcast,
Oh.
talking about what's been going on in the city. I know it comes through Waycross. It's not coming through the e-news. It's coming from Waycross. So you might contact them about getting on that mailing list.
All right, I want to thank Trevina and Mr. Johnson for their positive input tonight. It helps the meeting, appear a lot better whenever there's positive input. I want to thank our guests for attending. And Laura, if you would kindly give me a call or send me an email. Are you interested in joining the commission, or do you need a couple more meetings, or you just wanted to attend for your own edification?
I have to think about it. I have to admit that I find it really interesting. My husband actually did work for Magnum Mixer many moons ago, and I just told him when I was going to another room. So there's a lot of interest for me, but I get tired. Like, I'm like, okay, let's just cut to the chase. I'm a little bit like, stick to it. I have to admit. And so that, are they normally an hour and a half?
No.
I missed that.
is a little different.
I missed that last sentence.
Our meetings, Laura, are probably closer to an hour in length. And honestly, they're a little bit better when we're in person, I think, too.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I think the virtual aspects, it's hard to have good discussion. But typically, I think our meetings are more 60 minutes, give or take.
Tonight was a little different. We had some additional discussion.
Well, we spent almost a half hour on the commission, the chairman's report, all of us discussing. We gave everybody a chance to talk, but that was almost a half hour. It's in itself.
Yeah, which I appreciate. It's just that I find myself getting tired. I'm like, where's my glass of wine? I'm sorry, but this is too long. Like, but yeah, so I'm definitely interested. I'm going to think about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for that invite.
Okay, our next meeting. Oh, Ron said something about, did we discuss the summer break, Paul, that we were not going to meet in June? I don't remember us talking about that.
I think the plan was still to meet in June and July.
That's what I thought.
Correspond with the council recess in August. If we didn't need to meet in August, not meeting in August.
Okay, so we will see you the fourth Wednesday in June. And I assume it's going to be another Zoom meeting until the summer's over, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you all for your input and for attending tonight. And everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you next month.
All right.
Take
All
care,
right.
everyone.